examining quadratic relationships. Okay, you have seen that quadratic functions can be used to model projectile motion and area. Quadratic relationships occur in many areas of business, science, sports, and the arts. They are used to help maximize profits, develop parabolic reflectors, build bridge supports, determine the number of brackets in sports tournaments, create pleasing dimensions for photographs, and develop animation for electronic games. Okay. Now in this task, you will solve problems by writing and solving quadratic equations. The length plus width of a rectangular garden is 65 yards and the area of the garden is 1000 square yards. So this is the scenario we have, and then you have number of questions following that. That is, in the first one you are going to write an equation to represent the length plus width of the garden, then solve the equation for the length or the width. And then second question, you have write an equation to represent the area of the garden in terms of the length and the width. And third, use the equations in parts 1 and 2 to write a quadratic equation in one variable that represents the area of the garden. And the last part is you have to solve that equation to find the dimensions of the garden. Okay, so the first part here, the length plus width of the rectangular garden is 65 yards. So let me draw a rectangle here. This is a rectangle we have. Let me call these two, the longer ones are the lengths, and this is the width you have. Okay, and the sum of these two, the length plus width, even if this is length, opposite sides are equal in the rectangle. Okay, that's the thing. The sum of those two, adding the length to the width, you'll get 65 yards. That's what you have to write in this first part. Write an equation to represent the length plus width. That is L plus W is equal to 65. This is the equation you have, and these are the two variables, length and width. As the length changes, the width will change. Okay, then you are asked to solve this equation either for the length or the width. Okay, suppose if I subtract W on both sides. Let me subtract W on both sides. So what do you get from that? Cancelling of W on the left hand side, you will get length is equal to 65 minus W. Okay, that's the length equal to 65 minus W. And if you want to solve it for the width, I have here length plus width is 65. Now I'll subtract the length on both sides, take away L to give W is equal to 65 minus L. Alright, so the first equation is this, right? Length plus width is equal to 65, and on solving you got length is equal to 65 minus W, or the width W is equal to 65 minus L. Right, that's the fulfilling this first part. You got the equation, the blue one is the equation, and then solving it to get either the length or the width. Both of them we have. Now the second part, we are asked to write an equation to represent the area of the garden in terms of length and width. What is the formula for area of a rectangle? The area of any rectangle is equal to, we know that it is the product of length and width. This L times W gives you the area of the rectangle. And what is the area given to us? It is 1000 square yards. Okay, so I have to write this product, the length times width, is equal to the area, which is 1000. Right? Now use your equations in parts 1 and 2 to write a quadratic equation in one variable that represents the area of the garden. Even though you have an equation here in the second part, you're having two variables, length and width, two unknown things. We don't know what is the length and we don't know what is the width. That's the reason here you are asked to change this, make use of your first answer and the second answer and write a quadratic equation in one variable. That is, we have to replace either the length or the width by the formulas that you have just now. You got them. Here length is equal to 65 minus W, or the width is equal to 65 minus L. Any one of those two you can use. So let me write this again. I have L times W, the length times the width, is equal to 1000. It's 1000 square yards. But the length is equal to, the formula for the length I have here, L is equal to 65 minus W. I'm making use of the first one. So this L is how much? 65 minus W. Using your first answer, 65 minus W is L, and W is already there in this equation on the top, and on the right hand side we have 1000. So just remember, this L is replaced by its formula or the solution that you have here. You solved for L. L is 65 minus W. That's all. Nothing special there, just replaced. Now after doing this, we have to change it into a quadratic equation. So now right now it is not like a quadratic equation, but we have to simplify, put it in right order. So okay, let me make use of this distributive property. I can multiply this 65 with W so that you can get 65 W. You multiplied those two, and then again multiply W with W. So with a minus sign there, minus W times W is W square, right? So what we did here, 65 times W is 65 W, and W times W is W square with a minus sign there. Okay, next on the right hand side we have 1000. It is not in the standard form of a quadratic equation like this, ax square plus bx plus c. So further, what do you have to do? Let me write it down this way, or I can even subtract 100. Let me just write one more step. I'm just switching these two. I want to have the degree 2 first. W square plus 65W. This W has a negative sign. Beside W, like on, you have negative sign, a minus, so I wrote a negative sign there. And this is plus 65W. So you have plus 65W is equal to 1000. Sorry, it is 1000. I don't know why I wrote 100 there. Okay, now take away 1000 on both sides. Subtract 1000 to give negative w square plus 65w minus 1000 is equal to 1000 minus 1000 cancelled, you have 0, right? So now it is in the standard form of ax square plus bx plus c, where your a is equal to -1, b is 65, and c is equal to -1000. But I suggest you to convert this, change this negative w square into positive, so that handling and finding the factors will become much more easier to us. So how do you do that? You can just multiply everything, both the left hand sides and right hand side, by a -1. Whenever you have an equation, if it is an equation, throughout you can do whatever you want to, multiply by a number or divide by a number. So what do you have now? It is -1 times negative w square. Negative times negative becomes positive. We know that negative times negative is positive. So, and 1 times w square is w square. Alright, that is, it's a w square. Now positive times negative times positive will be a negative 65w. Okay, 65w, and again negative times negative is positive, and 1 times 1000 is 1000, is equal to -1 times 0. So 0 times any number gives you 0 only, so it is just 0. So now we have this one, w square minus 65w plus 1000 is equal to 0, and it is a quadratic equation, and we have it in standard form. In the standard form with the leading coefficient a positive number. So you are starting with a positive w square and all. It helps us to simplify or to get the factors. It will be very much easier to us. Okay, now let me copy this again here and write down the values of a, b and c, or just we are finding the factors. Of course here a is equal to 1, so our task is much more easier. Write the value of a is equal to 1, b is equal to how much? It is negative 65, a is 1, b is equal to negative 65, and c is equal to 1000. So 1 times 1000, it is same 1000 only, and you just let us look for those two numbers whose product is 1000, and addition of those two numbers should give you negative 65. So the sum is negative 65 and the product is equal to 1000. We are looking for two numbers whose sum is this negative 65 and the product is 1000. So now, because the product is positive 1000, you know that both the first and second number have to be negative, so that the sum becomes negative 65 and the product is positive 1000. Now, how do you figure out? You know, 1000 is 10 times 100, but 10 and 100, they don't help us, right? It won't work. 10 plus 100 is 110. It's of no use. Then let me take 1000 if I divide by 5, 5 can divide 1000 how many times? 5 times 2 is 10 and 2 0. So 205 won't help. It is 205. It's big number. Let me do one more thing. 5 divides this 200 how many times? 5 can divide 24 times and 0. Let us see this now. 5 times 5 is 25, right? This is 25 times 40 is equal to 1000. That's this 1000. That's what you have here. And add those two numbers. 25 plus 40 is 65. And you can easily make it as negative 65 if you take negative 25 and negative 40. So what we are trying to see here is by the trial and error method, directly if you don't get, just go ahead and find the factors. Start from small numbers and keep going till you get your required numbers. Sometimes it will take time, but you will end up getting your required numbers. Okay, now negative 25 is here and negative 40 there. Add those two numbers, negative 25, negative 40 is equal to negative 65, and the multiplication of those two is 1000. The condition is satisfied, the most important step. Alright, now this w square minus 65w plus 100, because of this a is equal to 1, you can directly get your factors of this quadratic expression. What are those two factors? W minus 25 and the other one W minus 40. See, so simple it is. As once we handled this negative sign and you got your a is equal to 1 instead of negative 1, our problem solved. And using your zero product property, w minus 25 is equal to 0 and w minus 40 is equal to 0. Find the value of w by adding 25 on both sides. If you add 25 on both sides, cancel off, you have this w, the first width is 25. Or if you add 40 in this second linear equation, cancel off, positive 40, negative 40. So you end up getting w is equal to 40, right? So the width of the rectangle is either 25 or 40. Now let me go back up here and we have the formula for length. Length is equal to what? 65 minus w, right? So let us find the length using those two widths. We have L, the length is equal to how much? 65 minus w. Okay, so L is equal to 65 minus this w here is 25, right? That is giving you the length of the rectangle is equal to 40. Alright, so if the width of the rectangle is 25, for that width the corresponding length is 40. Similarly, if the width is 40, the length is going to be how much? 65 minus the width is how much? 40. So 65 minus 40 is 25. The length is equal to 25 for the width of 40. So by default, usually we take the longer side as the length. So I can just say the length is equal to 40, and the shorter one, you can take it as the width. The corresponding width is 25. And in the beginning of this problem, they said that the length plus width is 65. Look, 40 plus 25 is 65. And the product of those two, the length times width, that is 40 times 25, the area is equal to 1000 square yards. So everything is satisfied. This is how you can solve a problem dealing with this length and width of a given rectangle by making use of this quadratic equation. Okay, so I have one problem for you. You can try this. Over here, the sum of the length and width is 55 and the area is 700 square feet. So you just have to do the same thing. Alright? Okay. Alright. Thank you. Thanks for watching.